Hello, and welcome to Through the Veil, where we get together to share stories and remember the wisdom that belongs to us. I'm Melissa Camrudin, and this week I am talking to Desiree, who's come on to share the story of her C-section and subsequent home birth after C-section, VBAC story. You'll note in this episode that there'll be little moments of silence where I've cut out the names of the midwifery clinics that Desiree attended. Not important details to the story, so you'll just find a little moment of silence in there, and that's just me cutting out their name. Enjoy. Hi, Desiree. How are you?
Good. How are you, Melissa?
Good. Welcome, and thanks for coming to share your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about the beginning of your mothering journey. How did it start for you?
Okay, so I have two girls, and my oldest is 6.5, so she was born in 2017. We were living in Australia at the time. So my two births were basically like as different as they could possibly get. My first ended up being a C-section in the hospital. It wasn't an emergency C-section, it was just a C-section, and my second ended up being a home birth in my living room in a birthing tub, like just completely different birthing experiences. So a little bit about me. When I first got pregnant, I have a history of heart issues in my family. So I had a heart defect when I was a baby. They had to do surgery. They did closed heart surgery on me, and I have different, like a different vascular system. So they had to, back then, which was like the 80s, they had to swap and change veins. It was actually like it was a procedure that had never been done before. I'm kind of an anomaly in the medical field. I was told by a doctor one time, like if I had been born 5 years earlier, I would have died. If I had been born 5 years later, they would have put a stent in my aorta and just blown it up like a balloon, just to get rid of the kink. But at the time, they didn't know what to do, so they took part of my IVC to fix the coarctation in my aorta, and then they basically just hoped for the best. So it worked. It worked very well. They monitored me for until I was about 13 and gave me the all clears. But they just said, when you get pregnant, we don't know how that's going to affect you, right? Because you have a lot more blood flow. You know, you have a lot of issues that could potentially come up. So when I had my first, they classed me as high risk because they just didn't know. So they monitored me. For the most part, I had a very stock standard pregnancy. I had morning sickness in my at the end of my first trimester. That eased off at some point in my second trimester, and then just had normal weight gain, no other issues, no high blood pressure. Blood pressure was normal. Didn't have any swelling or any major issues like that. So we were good. And I actually wanted to have a home birth for my first one because we lived in Australia. We lived rural, so we were about 2 hours from the major hospital. And we had a big soaker tub, like a jacuzzi tub in our place. And I was like, oh, it'll be so good to have a baby here. But they said no because there wasn't anybody close enough. If they needed to get me help, we were too far away. So that was fine. We ended up going, or I ended up going into labor in the tub. I was having a bath, ended up feeling contractions, and then went to the hospital probably at about 11 o'clock at night. And there's a lot that could be said about the first one, but basically I was there for about 24 hours and I didn't dilate past 2 centimeters. And they were trying all the tricks. They were, shoving their fingers up there and trying to give cervix a massage or whatever. And that was excruciating in and of itself. They were trying the drugs. But I think for me, I was just tired. and my body was just wanted to rest. I'd been up since 7 o'clock the morning before. So I was just tired, and it was my first baby. We didn't know what to expect. They tell you a lot of things in the hospital that make you feel like there's something wrong with you. Like, well, they come and check every 4 hours. Oh, you're still not dilated, still not dilated, still not dilated. And then it plays with your head as to, is there something wrong with me? Is the baby not gonna come out? When they tried giving the Pitocin to speed up the contractions, my eldest daughter dropped her heart rate, so they stopped that pretty soon, and her heart rate went back to normal. So they said, well, we can't really continue on with that because we don't want to put her in distress. And at about 9 o'clock, the following night that we were there, I was just like, you know what? And they have options, right? You go to the hospital and they have options. You got options for the drugs. You got options, obviously, for the C-section and stuff. And they said, what do you want to do? We got to give you antibiotics now because it's been too long.
Man, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't want the antibiotics either. So I was like, you know what? She's okay. I'm okay. Let's just do the C-section and be done. And that way, like, it's done, and we can start because you have to be in the hospital. There, we had to be in the hospital for 3 days after. So we can start in 3 days and then go home, right? So that's what we decided to do. It was a good C-section. Like, it sounds weird to say this, and I'm sure there are a lot of good C-sections out there. The midwife that I had at the hospital, because I have midwives as well, because it was like a birthing unit. She's like, that was the most beautiful C-section I've ever seen. But it wasn't an emergency C-section. It was just, they were taking their time. No one was in a rush. No one was frantic. So it was good. They just, did what they needed to do. She came out. My daughter was perfectly healthy. And then we just did our 3 days recovery in the hospital and went home. They told me in Australia if I wanted to have, I could try for a VBAC. Had to wait 2 years. So I said, okay, no problem. We had tried earlier than we had our second daughter, Naomi, but it just wasn't happening. So there was a bit more of an age gap. So there's 5.5 years between the girls. And then we ended up being in Vancouver, in North Van, when I got pregnant with Naomi. And I know a fantastic doula, Tanya. So when I got pregnant, I was like, can you be my doula? Of course, she's like, yes, of course. So I said to her, I'm gonna sign up with midwives just because we had the medical system is just not great right now, as most people realize, and we had a family doctor, but sort of not, because we got him just before COVID, but then it was like, they don't really want to see you. It's basically how it works.
Yeah.
And the times that we go to see him, even though we made an appointment, there was one time we went with my daughter, we were still waiting 3 hours in the waiting room. So it's like, I'm not doing this every couple weeks. I'm like, I'll go with the midwives. I'll get some, just get them to monitor me. And it did come up, people had asked, why are you going with the midwives? Because I had backup plans, basically, right? We were 10 minutes, if that, from Lionsgate Hospital. So we knew that if there was any issues, we'd be able to get to help, or help would be able to come to us fairly fast. But I still wanted to do the home birth if it worked out that way. And birth is such a funny thing where it's like, you can plan for birth, but it usually doesn't work out the way that you plan, right?
Birth does its own thing.
Birth does its own thing. That's right. So I just wanted to have my bases covered. And I did talk to Katie about this because I said, I'd really like to do a home birth. And they basically said, well, we can't be there. And I said, oh, really? Why? And basically the way it works is falls under the jurisdiction of the hospital. And my hospital doesn't like doing home VBACs. So they said, we will support you with a VBAC, but it needs to be at the hospital because that's what they're told.
It's such interesting politics because midwives in BC do attend home VBACs, like especially after one C-section only. Like maybe if you've had many, they might not. I'm not actually sure what their number is, but I know they go to VBACs, like they can under their license. So it's interesting that it's, by jurisdiction, and if the pressure of the obstetricians in the hospital is too great. Like that's really what it is, pressure from obstetricians in the hospital.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Whereas I believe falls under, well, they'd be under a different hospital, and that hospital must allow, or maybe not encourage, but say that it's okay.
At least,
Be supportive. That's right. They'd be supportive of home VBACs. So, so their DP actually suggested, do you want to go with that? But at this stage, I was already, I think, in my second trimester. I'm like, I doubt I'll be able to get a spot with because I was pretty sure like I'd have to leave his care. I mean, basically, it just came up. Do you want to switch to and or do you want to try going with? And I also knew that because I was in North Van and that was their jurisdiction, is over in Mount Pleasant area and in Vancouver. If there was a client that was birthing at the same time as me, but they were over there, they would go to that client first. So it's a gamble, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
They must be in such high demand too, because from all the stories I'm hearing, they're maybe the only clinic that really is supportive of choice.
Yeah.
Like whatever choice one wants to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's face it, I mean, I think if you look at the VBAC numbers too, well, just the cesarean numbers. I mean, it's a really high percentage of women who have their first kid will have a cesarean.
Yeah, it's like coming close to 50% now. It's 46. I can't remember. I was just looking.
So, I mean, it's there's a lot of women out there that for their first, for sure, and possibly second, third, whatnot, for various reasons, will have a C-section. And do they need it? Did I need a C-section? No, I don't think I did. I still had one. But there's a lot of factors that go into it, Hospitals, I feel for the most part, they kind of want to get you in and out in a 24-hour-ish period. And if it's not falling in that time frame, they will intervene to make it fall in that time frame. And that's just how birthing is right now. So let me think. So, okay, so we're now second kids, want to do a home VBAC, had Tanya as my doula, who said that they weren't going to be there. Tanya had told me that if we want to be there, if we called them, they couldn't refuse. But I said to her, I'm like, it's one of those things. You want people there that are supportive, right?
Yeah.
You don't want someone showing up going, you really shouldn't be doing this,
or
right?
who's really scared,
or who's scared
they're going to lose their license, or scared your body can't do it. Like
absolutely, yeah.
You don't want that for you or them.
Absolutely. So that's when Tanya and I started having discussions about who else we wanted to be there. So we decided to have a lady who's a traditional birth attendant there as well, just for support, right? Knowing that if we had to, like myself, my husband, and Tanya could bring this little person into the world, but it's nice to have somebody there that also has more knowledge and experience. So that's what we decided to do. So that was our birthing team. So we had met, like, I think a lot of people, especially if it's your first one, they think, okay, we'll pack the bag for the hospital, we'll do a couple of like breathing exercises together and that, and it's like, it's so much more involved. Birth is so much more involved. And we had quite a few meetings, like the four of us, including my husband, just so we knew what to expect. We knew what each other's roles were. My husband in particular, because a lot of times, men will, they don't know what to do, right? They want to help, but they don't know how to help. So it was really good that we had kind of prepped ourselves of what to expect, what we were going to do in certain situations, how we were going to approach this. So, yeah, so we felt ready. And then I went with my first, I went full term. So I was expecting to go full term, 40 plus, I think 3 with Chloe. And then I think it was 40 plus 2 when I went into labor with Naomi.
And
So,
you kept the midwives, right? Like you kept seeing them all the way through?
I kept the midwives. I kept seeing them all the way through. Sort of kind of informed them of my intentions, but also there was a few things that they were suggesting I do during pregnancy. And this is a very hot topic, and people will have, various opinions of it, but I come from a more holistic side. I felt like I was vaccine damaged at a point, not horrendously. I was given a DTaP vaccine without my consent because I got into an accident, and I was literally in the hospital being stitched up, and they just asked me when the last time I had it was, and I said I didn't know, and then I felt a prick in my arm. Like they didn't even ask me. The nurse was just literally standing next to me and jabbed me without my consent, and it just felt so invasive and so wrong. And take it as you will, but I had horrendous eczema for for 3 years after that, really badly, and then it was off and on. I was trying different things and trying to figure out what triggered it. And yeah, wasn't really planning on getting on a whole vaccine topic, but I have researched it extensively, and until you really figure out how these things are made, you don't really know how they affect your body. They culture them with all sorts of stuff. People have severe egg allergies. Well, they'll culture it with chicken eggs. People have, in the past have nut allergies. They've used peanut oil in some vaccines. So when you're creating an immune response in your body for one purpose, but there's other things in there, your body might not pick up what the medical what they want it to, right?
Not just the one thing. Like
Not
it's an
just the
immune
one
response
thing.
likely to every ingredient.
Yes, right. Likely to every ingredient, because that's what you're doing, right? Like that's the
Right.
substance you're putting in your body, creating the immune response. So if your body then comes into contact with something that it created an immune response for, then it's going to have a reaction, right? Whether it's intended or not. So, so they did their stock standard stuff, and then they had brought up the COVID vaccine in late pregnancy, and I was really taken back by that, because from what I had looked into, it was just not necessary and was causing so many problems for women and babies. And to me, it just seemed reckless. There's other ways, definitely other ways that you can prevent harm. So that was just my personal thing, and it's hot topic. People will have their own opinion. That's cool. Look into it for yourself. That's all I gotta say. So I had in the back pocket, but I really wasn't intending on using them unless it was like a last case thing. And I went into labor Tuesday afternoon ish. Started getting contractions. Had decent contractions throughout Tuesday night and into Wednesday. And then by Wednesday evening, they felt fairly strong. So I said to my husband, let's call Tanya. Get Tanya to come over and we'll just check in with her. So she did. And basically, a long story short, I was in labor from Wednesday. Let's say strong-ish labor for me. Wednesday evening, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Naomi was born Saturday afternoon. So it was like three days.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 days I was in labor.
So you can see at the hospital, they'd be like, stalled, it's not working.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Your body's not going to be able to deliver.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, and it's interesting because it's just not accepted as normal anymore to have long labors, right?
I guess because they don't see it. If you constantly stop like, if a labor goes beyond whatever, 12, 24 hours, you're like, I guess it doesn't work. Then you
Mm-hmm.
never get the opportunity to see the 4-day labor, which
No.
is just a variation of normal, where
Yeah,
everybody comes out healthy and happy
absolutely.
and empowered in the
Absolutely.
end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's body is so different.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is different to my body. I mean, just think about all the ways that you move your body or you stress your body too. And we all react differently.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, are really good at physical endurance, right? And some people are just not. And they've been like that. Like for me, I'm not fantastic at physical endurance. I'm not, and I tried, but I mean, I had a heart defect too, right? But regardless of that, I'm not a long distance runner. I'm not, I'm not like I can hike, but, going up the grind will kill me.
Me too.
Like it's hard.
Yeah.
But some people, their bodies just can do it and they
Mm-hmm.
thrive off of it. And some people just don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not taken into consideration, I think, often enough in birth is that we are all different. And,
Mm-hmm.
and what the baby wants to do is different. Each birth
Mm-hmm.
is different. Those that have had more than one kid will tell you
Yeah.
each birth is different. Some kids, come out quick and fast and furious, and other kids kind of just hang out for a while.
Yeah, and I think I've this is true in my experience, and I've heard other women say this, that when as your child gets older and you get to know them, you can see their personality reflected in their birth, how it
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Absolutely.
It's an interplay. It's like there's two of you.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Mm-hmm.
two of you. Yeah. Yeah. So I was in labor for 3 days, and it was a lot of reflecting, and I'd say it was like a 3-day therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of having to get out of my own head and get out of my own way and just surrender to the experience and just accept that this is what it is. And not to say that it didn't hurt, or there was definitely times where I was like, am I going to do this? Actually, a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
am I going to be able to do this? And a lot of times where a couple of times where we would fill up the pool, get in the pool, and stuff would happen, but the baby didn't come, obviously, right? So it was like, yeah, a lot of waiting, and it was mentally draining at times, but it was also lovely at times as well because we were at home. There wasn't a clock per se. I was watching the clock and we were monitoring it, but it wasn't like, okay, we got to have this baby out by tomorrow. There wasn't pressure, which was nice because you really don't need that in
Yeah.
birth. You really don't. There's already so much
It's enough
stress.
going on.
There's enough. Um, and it was awesome that we got to eat. I've talked to a lot of women that have had hospital births where you're not allowed to eat because they don't know if you're going to end up in a C-section.
Yeah, they're prepping you for surgery.
They're basically prepping you
Yeah.
for surgery when you're like, well, wait, I've been in labor for 12 hours, like I'm starving.
Yeah.
And you need the fuel. Like you have to have the fuel if you're going to end up pushing this baby out, and then your body needs to recover. So,
Mm-hmm.
you really can't be starving yourself. So that was also nice. I didn't sleep a whole lot. I had micro sleeps, I would say, between contractions. I kind of sat in a chair for a lot of it, like slouched in a chair because it was too uncomfortable for me to lay down. So yeah, but I mean, we went for walks. We went for walks in the forest. It was a nice experience overall. We were able to just do, very low lighting with some candles and some calm music and whatnot. So it was lovely. By Saturday, so Friday night, my eldest daughter, we have some really good friends. They asked if she wanted to come for a sleepover because we're like, yeah, baby should be coming soon. Like we're, getting
Definitely getting
getting
closer.
we're getting closer. Like the contractions were getting quite
Mm-hmm.
strong by Friday night. Yeah. late Friday night. So Tanya reckons I probably went into active labor at about that time. So even my active labor was still very long, but the way my body was doing it was I'd have quite strong contractions, but then have quite a long break in between them. Which is also another thing, like what they've put out there for what they say your body will do. You know, you'll have a contraction from this time and this time, and then you'll have a rest from this time and this time, and that's how you know that you're getting closer. Is not always true, because again, our bodies are different. So for me, up until I literally transitioned and my baby started coming out, I was still having probably 5-minute breaks in between my contractions. Like they were still long breaks, and it's not like the movies, obviously, but it's not necessarily even like the books, and what we're told to expect. So so Friday night my daughter went for a sleepover, and quite strong contractions all night. I really didn't sleep Friday night into Saturday morning. We set up the birth pool, had like the bloody show. We had like stuff was coming out, stuff was happening, but still no baby. So I had a series of quite strong contractions, and then it stopped. It eased off again, as it had been doing for days, and I kind of felt quite defeated at that point. So I said to my husband, I'm like, I'm just gonna go have a shower and just kind of be in my own head for a bit, figure out what we want to do. So he had a talk to Tanya and our birth attendant, and said, look, Des is very literal. She likes facts. She wants information. She's not, she's not a fluffy, let's just hope for the best kind of attitude. Like, she wants to know where we're going. So he's like, we really need answers at this point. Like, we need to know, we kept checking to make sure the baby was okay. So he was very concerned about that. You could tell. It's like, is Des okay? Yeah, Des is fine. She's totally fine. Is the baby okay? As long as the baby was okay, he wasn't totally worried. So, but he's like, we need to figure out what we do. Do we go to the hospital? Do we need intervention at this point? And he came, it was very sweet. He came and he sat down in the toilet when I was having a shower, and he goes, look, I, as your husband who loves you and wants this for you, like, I want you to have your home birth that you've wanted since our first daughter. But he's like, I don't think I can watch you go through this any longer. Like, it's been 3 days, how much longer are you prepared to go? And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, he's like, what do you want to do? Should we call the midwives? Should we drive to Lionsgate Hospital and just figure out what's going on? So when I got out of the shower, I had a chat with Tanya and our birth attendant, and they said, they're like, look, it's possible that baby's head is just not hitting the right part of the cervix, and there's a technique that they've heard of called, I always get this wrong, I think it's spinning babies. Spinning babies, that's right. So they're like spinning babies. So they're like, it's 10 positions that you do over the course of 20 contractions. So they're like, why don't we just try this? And if we're still in the same spot, then we'll figure out what next, right? But they're like, probably this will do it. So I was like, okay, great, let's do it. So I got all comfy in my bed, and the first one, they wanted me to put a leg over one side, kind of like if you're doing like a supine twist in yoga, right? So I did that one, and that was the first contraction. That was fairly strong. And they're like, okay, we're going to put it higher up now. So they put it higher up, closer to like my shoulder, and that was really strong. And I think it only took 3 contractions, and I was transitioning. Like, it was like yeah, and I remember just being in bed and legit screaming, and our birth attendant lady. She's lovely. Like, I tried to roll off the bed because I was like, it hurts, it hurts. She's like, you can do it. She's just gently kind of just guiding me back.
Yeah.
Not like forcefully, but just like, you
Yeah.
can do it. I was like, holy crap. So, so then you go through the fire, right? You have that last contraction, and then all of a sudden you're just like, whoa. And yeah, it was like the space opened up, and then I could start to feel baby slowly working down the birth canal. And then Tanya, who, I mean, I have nothing but gratitude for her being with me during this process. She was lying right next to me, just staring right in my eyes. She's like, okay, we're going to switch breathing techniques now. So we're going to do the ha ha ho. And we're just going to do it very gently so that baby comes out very gently, right? Like, okay. And we did that. And after probably about 3 or 4 of those contractions, I was like, I'm so comfortable in bed. I think I'm just going to stay here. And they're like, yeah, but you have white sheets and this birth is very messy. So they're like, and it feels so lovely to birth in the pool. So we'll help you into the pool. I'm like, okay. So I found this out later, but basically as soon as I transitioned and I was just laying there kind of like in this semi zoned out euphoric state with Tanya, like, oh, it's finally happening. My birth attendant was giving my husband like a whole bunch of jobs, like, okay, we gotta drain this pool, we gotta fill it back up, we gotta get the water the right temperature, get my blankets out, get the scale out, we're gonna make some tea, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, get some food on. Like, it was like, oh, go time.
Yeah, you were in the zone. You missed
I was in the zone, and
Yeah.
he was just so and then it was funny because my daughter was still at this sleepover and living her best life, ended up crashing some other kid's birthday party that day. Like, what a riot. Anyway, so he's like, well, we gotta go get Chloe. And they're like, no, you can't leave.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
you'll miss
Al,
this.
you can't leave. And he's like, but Chloe has to be here. And they're like, you gotta be here. Like, you don't have time. So Tanya's husband ended up picking up Chloe and dropping her off home. But it was just so funny because he was just frantic, like, he just didn't know what to do. What do I do? Anyway, so, and I'm in the tub. I'm on the edge of the tub. I ended up birthing baby in a squat. And yeah, so I could feel her. I felt her come around the pubic bone. So that was like the most painful of those contractions. And then I didn't feel a burning like the ring of fire they talk about sometimes. Didn't feel that at all. I just felt there was one contraction where her head popped out, and then my body took a break. So we were just kind of hanging with baby's head out, which is really weird. And Tanya started filming at that point. So we have the footage of her birth, which was quite amazing. And we were just, yeah, it was very peaceful and serene. And she, on the next contraction, she started going back in a little bit. And then, like, yeah, she went back in a little bit. Then she came out and she was out. She was here. And it was just, yeah, it was the most amazing experience to be able to catch your baby, but then be in the tub, and I'm in my house. So my daughter ended up coming in while I was still in the tub, probably about 10 minutes after I'd given birth. And it was like, meet your new baby sister. And she was just like, she didn't cry, but she had that face where it was like, oh, yeah, it was very sweet. And yeah, it was just, everything from there was just, we knew that she was okay. She was breathing. She had a good color to her. She had a good weight to her. So we got out of the tub. The placenta came out easy. Like, our birth attendant said, basically, we're going to help you stand up. And once you stand up, the placenta will come out. And it did. So that was awesome. And then my daughter cut the umbilical cord with her. So we got photos of that, which is lovely. And then had something to eat and checked over baby, made sure everything was good, and then we had a sleep. So it was really lovely. It was, I mean, if I could pick any type of birth, hands down, at home in some sort of water, whether it's your tub or birthing pool, every time.
Yeah.
For me. I will add though, because of what we didn't have the midwives there. It was a bit tricky trying to get her birth certificate because the midwives did come. We called them that evening, I think. So she was born at 1:15. And we called them probably at about 6 and just said, hey, you know, mom's just got up, but she's good, baby's good. And yeah, can you come by, you know, sometime in the next 24 hours? They said, yeah, we'll be there the next day. And they came and they checked everything over, asked a few questions, answered any questions I had or we had. And that was pretty much it. They did maybe 1 or 2 other visits, but they really weren't involved much after that. And they basically said, we can't sign anything for the birth certificate because we weren't here, which I knew. Yeah. So we had to go down to the birth, I guess, is it birth tests and marriages here? That's in Australia.
I think it's vital statistics.
Vital statistics here. So we had to go down to vital statistics and get, for those that have to do this, so you have to use their form. I'm blanking on the terms now.
Their affidavit.
Thank you. Their affidavit form. Because I knew that I had to get 2 affidavits. I'm pretty good when it comes to administration stuff, so I was reading their website, got 2 affidavits signed by a notary, went to vital statistics, and they said, oh no, it's not on the right form. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, really?
What do you care? But they do.
But they do. So they gave me the form, so I had to go back. Oh, and they read one of them, and they said, did you write this one? And I was like, how can you tell? But they're like, it can't be written by you. And I'm like, oh, what does it matter? Yeah, it can't be written by you.
Everybody I know, they write it, like, usually the family, like, I actually don't know anyone else, like, the family writes it, and then they go with the person, and, like, it's read and signed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Everybody has a bit of a different story. It's with registering their unattended births.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I had to bring it back to the person that witnessed it, who was our landlord at the time. And, because they obviously knew I was in labor having the baby. So it took a while. Like, it took longer than usual. So she was born in the end of January. I don't think I got her birth certificate until end of March, because it took me a while to get everything and then submit it to them, and then they had to double check everything. So they want proof of the pregnancy too. So I had to provide ultrasound photos, an ultrasound report, a couple of reports from the midwives, which is also why I wanted care too, is because, like, some people don't, I get it, some people don't want the invasiveness, but this day and age, just having some sort of record somewhere can really make a difference in the hassle that it is to, like, what's up? Let's face it, we operate in a commercial society, you know? I mean, there's people that don't have birth certificates for their kids, but then what do the kids do when they become adults and they need to work, right?
Yeah.
Like it all stems from that. And that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah. So, you know, if you have some sort of record, then it makes it easier on you to be able to get the stuff that you need for them. Yeah.
I went this time, I didn't have midwives with this pregnancy, but I went and got like a blood test at the very beginning to like to confirm pregnancy. Right. So, a serum test. And so then that's the documentation I sent in, because I didn't get ultrasounds. I didn't get any of the other things. But it's definitely helped. Like, they want evidence that you're not making up a baby and collecting
Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
benefits or something
Yeah.
like that,
For
right?
sure.
Like you had the baby, you didn't get the baby anywhere else. The baby actually exists, came from your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, even just thinking in like, how could I show that later? Well, I bought all these birth supplies. Maybe I get a blood test. If you got
Yeah.
an ultrasound, like, yeah.
Yeah, that was part of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think I showed a receipt for like a car seat that I bought, and um, the ultrasound photos, blood
Mm-hmm.
tests for sure. Just something to
It's like any of
confirm.
those things around like, what did you buy for your, like, what changed in your life? What sort of document, paper trail? There always is something,
Hmm.
you know, like you're doing
And
something.
they're making it stricter too. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
before they might have only wanted one proof, but
Mm-hmm.
now they might want three.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to read and figure out, yeah, what you
Yeah.
need.
It's definitely possible to get without like engaging more than you really want to with the medical system. I
Yes.
think like it's not like, oh, then I have to go and get vaginal exams or I have to go and get ultrasounds. Like you
Hmm.
don't, but it's worth thinking about while
It
pregnant so
is.
that you
It
you
is.
have some of those things.
Yeah. Or even
Whatever
just
it is.
going to see a doctor and just getting them to take your blood pressure and like
Yeah, you
check
could go to
baby's
a
heartbeat.
walk-in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all that you really need. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
got my, got checked out today. Yeah, baby's doing good. I'm doing fine. We're
Hmm.
good. 30
Yeah.
some odd weeks pregnant. Yep, should be happening soon. Like that's all you
Hmm.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the affidavits I filled out, it was just I didn't have anybody who was at the birth. Um, well, nobody was there, so there's no one to fill them out, and it can't be a relative. So it was just somebody who said like, yeah, I saw her pregnant last time on this date, and then
Mhm.
I saw her on this date with a baby.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
presumably the two are connected.
Yes. Presumably, it's the
Yeah.
same one. Yeah.
I think there's a connection between these two events.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the same that we had to do too,
Hmm.
because it was only, I mean, it was our doula, our birth attendant, and my husband that was there. So
Hmm.
my husband can't sign it, and the doula and the birth attendant are like, well, we shouldn't.
Yeah, it's definitely not safe for birth attendants to be putting their name to unattended births these
No,
days.
no,
Hmm.
no. But yeah. So it can be done, right? Like it can be
Hmm.
done, and
Yeah.
it was a pretty empowering experience to be able to have
Yeah.
baby at home and you know, rely on your own awareness of your body.
Hmm.
I know we've talked about this too, where it's like when you're doing a home birth, obviously there's no drugs, right? Not to say that you don't want the drugs. There was a point
Hmm.
in time where I was yelling out for the drugs
Yeah.
too, knowing that they weren't there, right? So, I mean, and then you can imagine too, if you're in a hospital and you yell out for them, they go, okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody's going to get to that point because it doesn't tickle.
Yeah.
Um, but knowing that okay, you're gonna have to go through this, and your body was meant to do this, and you are not gonna pass out from the pain.
Hmm.
You'll be fine. It'll hurt like hell, but you'll get to the other side of that and be like, oh, okay, but I did it.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is talking to so many women who, because they were numb, they couldn't feel baby coming out, right? And when
Hmm.
someone says push, there's no gauge, right? Like there's no gauge of, well, how much do I push and for how long?
Yeah.
And that's, to me, I think that's a lot of times when tearing occurs and when you start having problems, like pelvic floor issues after
Yes.
birth. Yeah, because you couldn't feel, and that's not anyone's fault. It's just circumstance, right?
There's
But
also
it's
the piece of getting regular vaginal checks, and there'll be a point where they're like, okay, you're 10 centimeters, you can push now, but you don't necessarily feel that yet,
no,
right? Baby's not hitting those nerves
no,
yet. And if you just wait, like just wait for baby to come down, or even like when you can see the baby, there's
yeah,
so much less effort in pushing. Whereas when you're
yeah,
pushing just from 10, you're pushing the baby all the way down the vaginal canal. That's exhausting and
it is.
really tough on your perineum, right?
Yeah,
Or on your pelvic bowl. Like you're
yeah,
just so much pressure for
yeah,
so long in there. I
yeah,
think, yeah.
yeah. And I didn't even push And that was the other thing too, is because we were already in the pool. Well, actually, baby started coming down when I was in the bed. So I was actually laying down when I could feel baby coming. And I wasn't pushing at that point. It was just because the contractions will push too, right? The contractions do the work, right? So, like, conserve your energy. You don't need to push
because
until...
and also you'll feel it.
Yeah,
You
you'll
will
feel it.
feel when you like you won't actually be able to stop it when the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
comes for pushing.
yeah.
Like it's just
No,
happening.
it's happening. Yeah. Yeah. So, I didn't start pushing until I was in the pool, and I was already in a squatting position. And then Tanya said, when you start to feel the urge to push, she's like, it'll start to feel like you need to do a poo, right? And that's basically the same sort of urge. It's like you feel it, and then you push. And she's like, and not hard. You're not like trying to push the baby out. You're literally just pushing to guide them along through the contraction. And I always stopped after the contraction. But again, if you're not feeling the contractions, how do you know when to stop, right?
Yeah. No, it's all guided. It's all right. Guided by an external piece who doesn't feel your perineum and doesn't feel what's happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful. So you had no perineal trauma I
had a very minor tearing that healed within a couple of days.
Nice. Yeah.
I know. I mean, you really can't get any better than that.
I know.
Even I was surprised. I was like, okay. And then it's also funny too, because when they talk about healing differently from your C-section to your vaginal birth, for me, because it was such a long labor, I would say that it was just a different type of healing. Like with my C-section, you're sore because you've had surgery and you can't really move you can't pick up anything heavy, and you can't, it's difficult to sit down and go to the bathroom, and it's just you've had your abdominals cut, so your core is not stable until it heals. But for me, with the vaginal birth, because I was in labor so long, it literally took a week for my body to like pop itself back into place, which I found wild. Like, I'd be in bed at night and I'd do these very micro adjustments, and I could feel my spine going like pop, 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 and my hip going, like just popping back into place. Yeah, it was very interesting. But
how did you find the two postpartum experiences? If you like move more into that, what would you say?
So I think I don't know, it was hard to say, because the C-section was in the hospital. They were monitoring me. Definitely, it's invasive in the hospital, right? Like, you're trying to rest, and every half an hour, it seems, there's someone coming in your room for checking your vitals, checking this, checking on baby. Oh, we got to tell you something. Oh, we're doing a photo shoot tomorrow down the hallway. Do you want to sign up? And it's like, please, just let me rest. Whereas the home birth, obviously, there isn't anybody doing that. My husband was there the entire time if I needed anything. My daughter was there, so it was like we were still together as a family. So it was, there wasn't that transition of going home. Like, you're already home. So I liked that. I felt that was very peaceful and very comforting. My second daughter, though, I think, 'cause she didn't sleep much. Like, I didn't sleep much through the labor. And then she didn't sleep very well after. And I was very sore. So I was very sleep deprived by like a week after. So 3 days of labor, 5 days after I've had Naomi, and I was like, I need help. So we had seen a chiropractor for my eldest because she had colic at about 2 to 3 weeks, and it really helped. So I was like, we need to take our baby to a chiropractor. And a couple people were like, oh no, just wait, it's like this when you have a newborn. You haven't had a newborn for a while. It's, you are sleep deprived, mother. I'm like, no,
Mama
there's
knows.
something wrong. I'm like, Chloe was sleep, like, she was sleeping well after
Mm-hmm.
she was born. And this one is just seems to be crying all the time. And like maybe 20 minutes of rest and then she would
Mm-hmm.
wake up and cry. And I'm like, I need help. So we ended up taking her to North Shore Wellness, I believe. It's a chiropractic clinic on just off of 16th and Lonsdale. Terry Dixon runs it. I didn't see Terry at the time. I saw a man named Scott, and they were just, he was phenomenal. He felt Naomi, and he was like, "Yeah, she's all right. Like her spine feels good." He's like, "Her this one hip though is very tight." So he kind of pulled it to adjust it, and she did this. It was wild. She goes,
Oh.
and then she slept for 3 hours.
Oh, so good.
I know. I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Scott. I love
Yeah.
you.
You're worth all the money.
Yeah, all the money. Just take
Yeah.
my money. So after that, things got a lot better. But yeah. So I don't know. We've tried to go of more just. I don't want to see a natural or holistic route because it just seems so. It's got different meanings for different people these days. We just try and stay as non-invasive as possible. Let's just say that, right? And just try to live our lives just like knowing that our body is intelligent and that if we respect our bodies and we, treat them with kindness, good food, and try not to put too much chemicals in them and that sort of thing, then we'll be better off for it. So I feel like that is the difference really between the hospital birth and the home birth is it's more of a trust in your body and what you were made to do, right? Like
Yeah.
this birth has been happening for as long as humans have been on the planet.
We're still here.
And we're still here, Yeah.
It must work well.
It must. It must have been designed pretty well.
Yeah.
For the majority of us to be okay and survive and thrive afterwards. It's okay. As much as it's being made out to be this scary thing. For most people, it's not. Some people, yeah, I get it, and I've always, I should have added to when we were planning on doing the home birth, the VBAC. We took Tanya and I took a course. It was about VBACs. It was a VBAC course. It was an online course that Michelle put on.
I think she's running that again soon.
Yeah. So it was phenomenal, and they just talk about the stats of about the risks, right? The risk of tearing and what would happen and what that would feel like, and they broke down the stats even further to be not quite as scary as what they make them out to be. But I said to Tanya, I said, okay, so a lot of VBACs do happen in the hospital. We know that there's drugs in the hospital. So what do you think the stats look like for women who have been numbed and they're having a VBAC? And like what we were talking about, they can't feel. And maybe they're pushing too hard, or maybe there's something going on in their body that they can't necessarily detect until it becomes a problem. Like, what do you think about that? She's like, I've never thought about that, but yeah, that's a definite possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the more we're interfering and providing external validation or even like external prompting to our bodies, like the quieter that inner voice and inner knowing gets. And it's a trade-off. And yeah, always something to consider, right? Like which one do you trust more? Or which one do you want to nurture? Michelle came and she was on the podcast and I love this quote. She said, "Who do you want to meet on the other side of this? Who do you want to be on the other side of this?" And yeah, if you want to nurture that voice, then less external validation, more listening to the inside and trusting that your body knows. And if you need somebody, if you do need that hospital, if you do need something, that you will also know that. You'll
Mm-hmm.
know.
You'll
And you
know.
go.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
know. And I think a lot of us too, by the time you have that first kid, you've done stuff with your body. Like most of us have either done, yoga or dance or gymnastics or some sort of sport, right? And if you think about it, there's times when you're doing certain maneuvers or certain poses or certain postures where you're really in tune with your body and you can feel the micro movements and the micro adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're really in the zone with birth and there's nothing else that's getting in your way, it's the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the exact same thing. So you can, and there's another person involved too, right? So it's like this dance, and you can feel baby, but you can also feel your body responding. And it's, I don't know, it's like there is this complete lack of control.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when there's no intervention, you at least have awareness. If not control,
Mm-hmm.
you have awareness, and that's
Yeah.
huge. That is absolutely huge.
Yeah. It's an incredible experience in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be that in tune with your body.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I
is.
haven't experienced that in another setting. Not quite that intensely. Yeah.
The only time I've ever experienced that was doing yoga, and like, because
Mm-hmm.
I've done yoga teacher training, and where you're really getting into a pose and you're really really focusing on an
Yeah.
area of your body to get the alignment right or get the stretch a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like you wake up parts of your body you didn't even know you could feel
Yeah.
individually.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Mm-hmm.
end up activating muscles that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was there.
Yeah. Or that I could control that on its own. Like it's a
Yes.
separate piece from the others.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Mhm.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. New episodes are released every Tuesday. You can submit your story through the link in the show notes or connect with us on Instagram, link in the show notes as well. Follow, subscribe, share, write us a fabulous review. These are all great ways to be part of the movement toward more powerful and peaceful births. Until next time.